The woman gasped, staring at the man standing on her porch. His face was older, worn by time, but unmistakable. He died in 1974, she whispered. The man blinked slowly. No, ma'am, he said. That's just what they told you. And in his hand, he held the watch. The watch. The one they buried with her husband. That's when she screamed. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. Because sometimes the dead come back not to haunt you, but to finish what they started. Margaret Louise Owens hadn't spoken out loud in 4 days. Not since the nurse left. Not since the heating pipe burst and soaked the carpet. Not since the birds stopped coming to the feeder. She wasn't mad about it. Truth is, silence had its own shape. It wrapped around her like the last quilt her mother ever made. Familiar. Threadbare. But warm. At 82, Margaret had stopped waiting for surprises. The world, she believed, had used up all its big moments. The war. The wedding. The baby. The funeral. The letters. The silence. Until Thursday. At 3:17 p.m., a knock came. Not a soft one either. 3 knocks, sharp as a drill sergeant's voice. Margaret nearly dropped her teacup. Nobody knocked anymore. Not since the mailman retired. Not since her son stopped visiting. When she opened the door, her world cracked. There he was. Same square jaw. Same slope of the shoulders. Same dimple, though a little lost in the wrinkles. Same eyes that once promised to love her forever, just before Vietnam took him. Ma'am, the man said, like he didn't know her. Like she was a stranger. She didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Her hand trembled on the doorknob. It wasn't possible. Her husband, Henry Owens, had been declared dead in 1974. There'd been a flag. A coffin. A folded telegram. Margaret had kissed cold marble every year since. But now, he was here. Alive. Flesh and bone. Holding, the watch. The same gold watch she buried with him. The back engraved, "Forever is just the beginning." M to H, 1959. And then came the thunder in her chest. Her knees buckled. She felt the floor come too fast. The world spun. And darkness took her. She woke up to the smell of something long forgotten. Bacon. Real bacon. In a cast iron skillet. The crackle and sizzle. The sound of someone humming Moon River, off key, but familiar. She turned her head. Slowly. There he was. Sitting at her table like it was 1963 again. Shirt tucked. Slippers on. Her apron, even. Henry. But not Henry. Because Henry was dead. She said his name, barely above a whisper. Henry. The man turned, and in that moment, her heart snapped like a twig. His eyes weren't the same. They had grief in them now. Whole galaxies of it. "My name's not Henry, ma'am," he said softly. "But I think I belong to you. The sheriff came that night. Said the man had no ID. No fingerprints. Just the watch. And an old photograph of Margaret, folded so many times it was nearly torn in half. One she hadn't seen in 50 years. But it is him," Margaret insisted, sitting on the edge of her floral couch, gripping the photo like a Bible. The sheriff took off his hat. "Ma'am. Henry Owens was buried. In Arlington. I've seen the file." Margaret's lips tightened. "Then explain this." She held up the watch. He didn't have an answer. No one did. The man, he said his name was Ellis, stayed on the porch that night. Slept on a rocking chair, a blanket over his knees. Like some sad ghost trying to remember what it was to be real. Margaret didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling. At the picture of Henry on the wall. The one in uniform. Smiling like he knew something. And then it hit her. The letters. She hadn't opened Henry's war letters in over 4 decades. Couldn't bear it. But now, she found the old shoebox beneath the bed. 32 envelopes. And in the very last one, dated June 14, 1974, Henry had written something strange. If you ever see a man wearing my face, don't be afraid. Just listen. There's more than one kind of war, Maggie. And mine wasn't over when they told you it was. Margaret dropped the letter. Her hands shook. Was it a coincidence? A dying man's poetry? Or had he known? The next day, Ellis made breakfast again. He knew where everything was. Every drawer, every dish. When she asked how, he just said. Some memories aren't learned. They're given. She didn't understand. Not yet. But her heart did. And as they sat on the porch in the golden light of morning, he said 6 words that would change everything. Ma'am. I think they lied to you. The letter was dated June 20, 1974. But it never made it to Margaret. Not back then. She found it the morning after Ellis said they lied. Tucked deep inside the lining of the shoebox. Wrapped in wax paper. Different paper, different ink. Smelled of smoke. Fire. War. She didn't open it at first. She stared at it. The envelope wasn't in her handwriting, nor military issue. The return address was blurred, as if it had traveled through storms. Or tears. She sat at the kitchen table. Her tea untouched. Ellis stood at the doorway, not saying a word. Finally, she broke the seal. Maggie. If this finds you, it means I didn't die. Not in the way they said. I'm somewhere. I don't know where. But I saw them. They buried a body that wasn't mine. They gave you a name that wasn't me. They told me I was dangerous. That I knew things I shouldn't. Things that don't belong in the world. They locked me away, Maggie. Not in a cell. In something worse. A room with no windows. No sky. Just white. Always white. I don't know how long it's been. But I hold on to your face in my head. It's the only thing that hasn't blurred. If you meet someone who looks like me, listen to him. He may not be me, but he carries my blood. Love you always. H. Margaret dropped the letter. Her vision swam. The words were his. The loops. The way he wrote her name like it was sacred. But what did he mean? He may not be me. She looked up. Ellis was still there. Same eyes. But suddenly, more afraid than before. She stood. Walked to the drawer. Opened it. Inside, Henry's old service revolver. Still cold. Still waiting. Sit down, she said. Ellis didn't move. Sit. He did. She laid the revolver on the table. Between them. Heavy as guilt. Who are you? She whispered. His answer came in pieces. I was born the day your husband disappeared, Ellis said. His hands trembled. There were others. Men like me. Same memories. Same faces. But only I got out. They made us from pieces of men. Soldiers. Heroes. The ones that didn't die but couldn't come home. He looked up at her. I have Henry's voice. His habits. His hands. But I'm not him. I'm the echo. The remainder. Margaret didn't speak. Her mind screamed. Her chest hollowed. He continued. I escaped 6 months ago. Took years to figure out where to go. I followed the dreams. Your name. Your house. This porch. He placed something on the table. A photo. It was her. From 1960. The very same one Henry kept in his breast pocket. But on the back, written in red marker. Subject imprint complete. Memory stability, 97%. Handle with caution. Margaret turned to the revolver. It was so close. So easy. One shot. She could erase the lie. The pain. The thing in front of her. But Ellis didn't beg. He leaned forward. Tears in his eyes. I didn't come here to trick you. Or hurt you. I came to ask, what did love feel like? The real thing. Because if I'm not real, I want to at least know what being loved might have felt like. The revolver blurred. She was crying. Not because of fear. But because she saw it in his face, he didn't know who he was anymore. That night, she burned the letter. Some truths, she figured, were better kept in ashes. Ellis stayed. He slept in the guest room now. She made him tea. He learned to cook toast without burning it. They didn't talk about the letter again. But sometimes, late at night, she'd hear him whisper her name through the wall. Not, ma'am. But, Maggie. Like it meant something. One morning, the phone rang. Margaret hadn't heard that phone ring in weeks. It was her old rotary, stubborn and loud. She answered. The voice on the other end said. Is this Mrs. Owens? Margaret Owens of 114, Grove Street. Yes, she said slowly. This is Sergeant Tyler, U.S. Military Personnel Archives. Ma'am, we've recently recovered classified documents related to your late husband. We believe you need to see them. Margaret's breath caught. What documents? There was a pause. Ma'am, we have reason to believe Henry Owens may not have died in 1974. Or if he did, someone made sure you never saw the truth. Margaret's hands shook. She looked out the window. Ellis was in the garden. Planting her roses. Right next to the stone that said, Henry Owens, 1935 to 1974. And she realized. She didn't know which scared her more. The man she buried. Or the one digging beside him now. There's a place between memory and madness. It doesn't live on any map. It doesn't cast a shadow. But if you sit long enough in the silence, if you let the world slow down until all you hear is your own heartbeat, you'll feel it. That's where Henry Owens had been. And Margaret? She was about to walk straight into it. The day after the call from Sergeant Tyler, she received a package. No return address. Just an official U.S. Department of Defense seal across the front, stamped in red, declassified, by Order 443, posthumous review. Inside was a single folder, thick with age. Yellowing pages. Notes typed on a faded typewriter. Margins filled with handwriting, sometimes messy, sometimes clinical. But on the very first page, printed in block letters. Project Dovetail. Subject, Henry M. Owens. Status, recovered. Memory reconstruction, 94%. Physical clone, operational. Identity restoration, failed. Last known location, Room 7, Section Delta, Fort Anderton Underground Facility. Margaret read it 3 times. She wasn't sure if her heart had stopped or was beating too fast to feel. Clone. Failed identity. Room 7. She turned the next page. It was a photograph. A man sitting in a chair, wires trailing from his scalp, his chest. His face gaunt, hollow. But it was Henry. Her Henry. Or someone who wore his face like a borrowed mask. And scribbled along the corner, barely legible. The memory of love is more dangerous than death. He remembers too much. Shut it down. Ellis was in the kitchen, slicing apples. He hummed an old tune. She placed the file on the table. "Do you remember this place?" she asked. He looked down. His hands froze. "The room with no sky," he whispered. She sat down across from him. "You've been there." He nodded. "That's where they kept us. Where they made us forget. Over and over. But sometimes, something stuck." He picked up a slice of apple. Didn't eat it. Just held it. "They showed me videos. Of you. Told me she was my dream. Not my memory. Said dreams were safer." Margaret leaned forward. "What else did they say?" Ellis looked at her now, not like a stranger, but like a man desperate to understand his own blood. "They told me if I ever escaped, you'd hate me. That I'd ruin whatever pieces of peace you had left." His voice cracked. "I almost didn't come." Margaret touched his hand. And for a long second, it felt like Henry's hand. Warm. Steady. Familiar. "I'm glad you did," she said. That night, Ellis had a nightmare. Margaret heard him from down the hall. Moaning. Gasping. Muttering numbers, coordinates, names she didn't recognize. She entered the room. Sat beside him. Held his hand. His eyes shot open. He looked terrified. "They're still watching me," he whispered. "They never stopped." She didn't ask who. She just stayed until he slept again. The next day, she made a decision. She called the number Sergeant Tyler had given her. "I want to see it," she said. "The facility. Fort Anderton." There was a long pause. Then, "Ma'am, that's not recommended." "I'm not asking for recommendations," she snapped. "I buried a man that may still be alive. Or maybe something else entirely. I have the right." Another pause. "Understood. We'll arrange transport. One condition, bring the subject with you." She looked at Ellis. He was staring out the window, mouthing the names of birds. "All right," she said. "We'll come together." They drove in silence for most of the ride. 2 hours out of town, past the state line, into a valley so deep even the GPS gave up. Finally, they stopped at a guarded gate, surrounded by pine trees and radio towers. Fort Anderton. No signs. No flags. No welcome. Just the cold buzz of secrets humming beneath the soil. They were escorted underground. Through concrete tunnels. Past steel doors with numbers instead of names. Room 7. Delta Wing. The hallway smelled like bleach and forgotten time. Then, the door opened. And Margaret saw him. Henry. Not Ellis. Henry. Sitting in a wheelchair. Older than she remembered. A beard. Missing 2 fingers. But those eyes, her Henry's eyes, were still there. She gasped. He turned toward her, slow. "Maggie," he said, barely audible. She ran to him. The guards didn't move. She knelt down. "It's me," she sobbed. "I'm here." Henry smiled. Then he looked at Ellis. His expression changed. Darkened. "You." Ellis froze. "I tried to stop them," Henry rasped. "Tried to keep you from waking. You weren't ready." Margaret looked between them, confused. "What does he mean?" Ellis stepped back. "I don't know," he whispered. But he did. He remembered now. He remembered everything. Ellis wasn't just made from Henry. He was made to replace him. Henry had resisted. Refused to let go of his memories. Of Margaret. So they made Ellis, a version of Henry that would comply. Ellis was meant to forget. But he didn't. His memories weren't given. They were stolen. Why did you come? Henry asked. To understand, Ellis said. To steal again, Henry coughed. Ellis lowered his head. I just wanted to know what love felt like. Henry stared at him for a long time. Then turned to Margaret. I'm dying, Maggie. Real this time. No coming back. No science. Just, gone. Tears slid down her cheeks. I don't know what to feel, she said. Henry reached for her hand. Feel what's real. He looked at Ellis. Don't hate him. He didn't ask to be born. Then he smiled, soft. Maybe, he's my second chance. Henry died that night. A quiet exit. No alarms. No monitors. Just a man letting go of pain. Margaret held his hand. Ellis stood beside her. Neither of them spoke for a long time. But something changed in the room. Something unspoken. A peace. As if the storm had passed. And morning would come. The day after Henry Owens died, truly died, the sky over Fort Anderton was unusually clear. The kind of blue that makes you believe in God again. Margaret and Ellis stood together as the orderlies wheeled Henry's body out. No fanfare. No salute. No flag. Just a white sheet over a man who'd survived death twice and never stopped carrying the war in his chest. Ellis watched him go with his hands clasped behind his back. Like a soldier. Margaret, she just watched. Not crying. Not anymore. Because she had no tears left. But her silence spoke volumes. A silence full of thank yous, goodbyes, and what ifs. The government offered her a ride home. An unmarked black SUV with tinted windows and two agents who didn't say much. She declined. Instead, she and Ellis took the bus. The same way she and Henry had once gone to Chicago for their honeymoon in 1959. Back when the seats were scratchy and the windows fogged up with their laughter. Margaret didn't speak until mile 40. She stared out the window. Trees flashing by like memories. Then, what do we do now? Ellis didn't look at her. He just said, start over. That answer didn't satisfy her. But it was honest. Back home, the roses were still blooming. She sat on the porch swing. He brought her tea. No sugar, just the way Henry used to make it. Your hands don't shake anymore, she said. Ellis smiled. Neither does my heart. That night, she brought down a box from the attic. Inside were old albums. Polaroids. Letters. Henry's dog tags. Her wedding veil. She placed them all on the table. I want you to see it, she said. All of it. Ellis leafed through the photographs. This was your wedding, he asked. Yes. He looked at her. You were beautiful. She laughed. Was? He smiled. And in that moment, the air changed between them. Over the next weeks, something unexpected bloomed. Not romance. Not yet. Not quite. But rhythm. They shopped for groceries together. Sat at the park bench where she used to feed birds. He fixed the back steps. She taught him how to dance the waltz, barefoot, in the kitchen, to old Sinatra tunes. They moved like two people unlearning loneliness. Neighbors whispered. Margaret's got a man in the house again. She's finally smiling. But Margaret didn't care what they thought. For the first time in decades, she didn't feel haunted by the past. She felt held by the present. Then, one Sunday afternoon, Ellis didn't come home. He'd gone out to pick up milk. Said he'd be 15 minutes. It had been an hour. Then 2. Then the phone rang. The voice was cold. Clinical. Mrs. Owens. We regret to inform you. Subject 19 has been taken back into protective custody. He was never authorized to leave the facility. Margaret's hands clenched. Taken? He's not a subject. He's a man. We appreciate your cooperation. This is for national security. She slammed the phone down. Her hands trembled. Her soul roared. The next morning, she drove. Fast. Angry. Determined. She hadn't been behind the wheel in years. But rage has a way of sharpening reflexes. She drove straight to Fort Anderton. Demanded answers. They stalled. Stonewalled. Told her Ellis had been relocated. She didn't believe them. Then she played her last card. The envelope. The letter from Henry. The one she hadn't burned. She slammed it on the desk of Colonel Briggs, the facility's director. This letter proves you lied for 50 years. Proves you buried my husband in silence while you built another from his bones. You so much as touch that boy again, I'll take this to every news station, every paper, every courtroom from here to D.C. The colonel stared at her. Unblinking. Then, a faint smirk. You're more dangerous than he is. Damn right I am, she snapped. 3 days later, Ellis came home. No fanfare. No guards. No explanations. Just a cab pulling up at dawn. Margaret stood on the porch, bathrobe tight, hair still pinned from sleep. He looked tired. Hollowed out. But whole. They let you go? She asked. He shook his head. They couldn't keep me. She stepped forward. Paused. Then embraced him. Tightly. Like someone hugging not just a man, but the time they lost. I thought I'd never see you again, she whispered. Neither did I. They sat in the kitchen, like always. But something had shifted. He looked older. Not in his face. In his soul. They showed me a video, he said. Of what? Me. The day I was made. They said I was just a vessel. A copy. A contingency plan. Nothing more. Margaret's eyes didn't waver. What do you believe? He looked at her. I believe love isn't something you can fake. She reached across the table. Held his hand. You don't have to be Henry. You just have to be you. His voice cracked. I don't know who that is. She smiled gently. Then let's find him together. That night, they danced again. Barefoot. Kitchen floor. No music. Just the sound of a heartbeat, one that wasn't cloned, programmed, or constructed. One that was his. And hers. Together. But just when peace began to settle. The mailbox creaked. Inside was a new envelope. No stamp. Just a note. 5 words. Subject 20 has been activated. Ellis read it. Then looked up at her. And said, they made another one. The note stayed on the kitchen table for hours. No one touched it. No one moved. 5 words. Subject 20 has been activated. It sat there like a spark on dry timber, quiet, but dangerous. Ellis didn't eat that morning. Margaret didn't press him. They just sat, like 2 statues waiting on the thunder. And when Ellis finally spoke, it wasn't fear in his voice. It was shame. They made another version of me, he said. Better, probably. Colder. Stronger. No doubts. No heart. Margaret looked at him. You're not a mistake, Ellis. You're proof. Of what? She reached out, touched his chest. That there's more to a man than what made him. 2 days passed. Then came the call. Private number. Male voice. Mechanical. Crisp. Mrs. Owens. We need your cooperation. Subject 20 has gone rogue. She tightened her grip on the phone. I don't work for you. This concerns your safety. We believe Subject 20 is heading your way. Why? He's looking for Subject 19. Ellis. We need to apprehend him before he reaches civilian areas. Margaret went still. Don't come near my house. Ma'am. She hung up. Then she bolted the doors. Closed the blinds. Checked the revolver in the drawer. Ellis stood in the hallway. You think I'm in danger? He asked. No, she said. We are. Night fell hard that evening. The sky turned the color of bruised peaches. And just as the clock struck 9:17 p.m., headlights swept across the front lawn. A figure stepped out of the car. Same height as Ellis. Same build. Same walk. He moved like a mirror, 1 step behind, 1 inch off. Margaret's heart climbed up into her throat. Ellis opened the door before she could stop him. The man stepped into the light. Same eyes. Same jawline. Same voice. But no warmth. I'm here for what was taken, Subject 20 said. Ellis stood between him and Margaret. What was taken? The life. The love. The chance. You weren't supposed to feel, Subject 20 snapped. You were supposed to replace. Obey. And disappear. Ellis didn't move. I did feel. I know. That's why I'm here. They fought. Not with fists. But with memory. Subject 20 recited coordinates, commands, protocols. Ellis responded with first kisses, the sound of laughter in a rainstorm, the smell of tea on Sunday afternoons. It wasn't a battle of men. It was a battle between design and choice. And Margaret, she watched. Tears streaming. Not because she was scared. Because she understood. She wasn't watching a clone argue with his shadow. She was watching a man fight for the right to be real. Subject 20 pulled a pistol. Sleek. Black. Government issue. Step aside, he said. Ellis did not. Margaret stood behind him, unflinching. I'm not leaving her, Ellis said. Subject 20 raised the gun. I wasn't programmed to miss. And then, a sound tore the night. But it didn't come from the gun. It came from behind. From the woods. A single crack. And Subject 20 collapsed, a tranquilizer dart in his neck. From the tree line, a soldier stepped out. Not a suit. Not an agent. Just a man. With gray hair and quiet eyes. Sergeant Tyler. You were right, ma'am, he said. Love changed him. They took Subject 20 away. In silence. No questions. No thanks. But as Tyler left, he turned to Margaret. You gave him something we couldn't. What's that? She asked. A soul. Weeks passed. Autumn came. The roses died off. But Margaret smiled more now. Laughed even. She and Ellis rebuilt the porch swing. He carved their initials into the beam. M+E. No dates. No promises. Just the now. Just enough. One night, as they watched the leaves fall, Ellis asked her a question. Do you ever wish it had been Henry? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took his hand. Looked into his eyes. And whispered. No. I just wish we hadn't waited so long to meet. He kissed her cheek. And for the first time in his short, strange life, Ellis cried. Not because of sorrow, but because he finally understood what Henry tried to protect. Love wasn't just a memory. It was a choice. Made fresh each day. 10 years later, the local paper ran a story. Mystery man at Veterans Memorial dies peacefully, name unknown. The article said he was kind. Quiet. Loved clocks, gardening, and dancing in the kitchen. No family on record. But someone had left a gold watch in his pocket. Inscribed on the back. Forever is just the beginning. M to H, 1959. Margaret had passed the year before. Same porch. Same swing. Same sunrise in her eyes. She died smiling. And in the will, one simple line. He was never Henry. But he loved me as if he was. And that's more than most ever get. Write in the comments where you're from, let's see how far these stories can spread. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new exciting stories. See you soon.